In this video, I'm going to be telling you what I think about the 1 to 7 player game between two cities. Yeah, you heard me, 1 to 7 players. One thing that lots of us gamers really seek out is a board game that works and is fun and works well at high player counts like 5, 6, and 7 players. Now me, personally, I'm 100% okay with just playing a party game, but I will admit, sometimes it is nice to kind of have like a game that feels a little bit more like a serious game, especially with a group of gamers that all want to join in one game together, but the group is just a little too big for most traditional games. The way it works is that on your turn, you're going to draft 2 tiles, and you're going to use actually both of these tiles for a city. You're going to use one for a city on your right and one for a city on your left. But all the players around the table are actually going to be drawing these 2 tiles at the same time and all deciding one tile to go on their left and one to go on their right. So what that means is on your turn, you're going to be negotiating with the player on your left and on your right, trying to decide basically the best way to build your city, because what's going to happen is between each player, you're going to have a city being built. So I'm going to build a city with this player right here between us, between 2 cities. I'm also going to build a city with this player right here. And the reason you want to negotiate is that those tiles are going to score differently depending on basically how they're combined. So for example, you really want to get parks in at least groups of 2. So if I see my person on my right drew a park, and that will work really well with my park. So I might say, hey, if you put your park over here, we could have 2 parks. That's going to be a good score. But you see the player on their right might be saying, actually, we really need the park for your city on the other side of you. And like most of these games, there's different types of tiles that work in different ways. There are the parks I just mentioned that really work well, and they're in groups of 2 or 3. Once you get over 3 in a group, they don't really help you that much. There's also shops that want to stay in straight lines, either vertically or horizontally. And there are offices, houses, and taverns that all kind of have their unique way of scoring, but I think you kind of get the idea. Because of the different way the tiles score, you really want to kind of convince the players on your left and your right to give you the tiles that work best in the city closest to you. Now at the end of the game, all the players are going to have a 4x4 city on their left and on their right, and each one of those cities is going to be shared with a player sitting directly across from them. What's interesting though is the winner is the player who has the highest score of the lowest of their 2 cities, which means you need both of your cities to do well. You're going to keep the lower of the 2 scores. So that's why you can't just convince the player on your right like, hey, why don't you just put all your good tiles here? I'll put all my good tiles there. We'll make just one awesome city. There's going to be times you're going to say, yeah, I know that combo's here, but this city's already good. This one's struggling, so I got to make sure this city gets a little bit better, because again, you're going to keep the lowest of the 2 scores. Now, one of the really cool things about between 2 cities is that, let's say I'm playing a 4-player game. I'm communicating with the players on my left and my right, and they're both communicating with the 4th player, which is kind of sitting across from me. I don't talk to that player. I only talk to the players right here. When we add a 5th player, if you have a 5th player jump on, it doesn't add to the length of the game. I'm still talking to these 2 who are talking to people there, who now there's a 5th player sitting there too, right? Add a 6th player, same deal. You're only concerned about the players immediately on your left and your right. So from a 4, 5, and 6, and 7 player game, it's not really changing the dynamic of the game too much. Now the 3-player count is a little different, because the 3 players, I'm communicating with these 2 and they're communicating with each other. So it is a little bit different dynamic when you get down to the 3-player level, but 4 to 7 kind of remains the same game at the same length, really anywhere in that player count. Now I have before on this channel made fun of the game 7 Wonders. It's not my favorite game. I often feel like 7 Wonders, it works at 7 players. If you really want to play a game that's not a party game and you really want a 7-player game, I've always kind of said, well, I guess it's the fine game for that situation. Now I love 7 Wonders Duel. If you watched the channel before, I love 7 Wonders Duel, but just the classic 7 Wonders, I think it's okay. I think Between Two Cities is a much better game that plays the higher player counts. I feel like you have a little more interest in the negotiation. They're both fairly lucky games depending on what you draw, but at least you have that little added like, oh, I get it, kind of like negotiate and say, okay, let's really go for this tavern idea over here. You might not win, but at least you and this player over here kind of had a little strategy how you built this, and you and your player over here maybe tried to get the most houses and the most different building types in your city. You feel like you did a little bit more in the game. I feel there's a little more to hang on than to, if you've played 7 Wonders, I feel like it's just a little more, you get a card and build the card you want to build. This game has that cool negotiation factor that gets added. So I would say don't expect Between Two Cities to like blow your mind. Don't expect the greatest game you've ever played in your life. But if you're looking for a game you can kind of bring the group together, maybe a group that really wants to hang out, maybe play a short together game before you split up into smaller groups. If you got 5 or 6 or 7 people there and they're like, hey, let's just do one thing together kind of as a group to socialize all together before we split into the smaller groups, it is a great game for that. Thanks so much for checking out the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it and found it helpful. If you want to subscribe to the channel, you will see more reviews like this one, also a bunch of top 10s, and just in general, some fun board game content. See you in the next one.